Hey, we're back. This is John.
It's Paul.
And that's it. There's no Eric today.
No, Eric.
Once again, we're the OGs of What If Geeks. And this is What If Geeks. And since it's just me and Paul hanging out, and it is a few days before Halloween, we're going to do like a little Halloween Havoc type episode. I love to do these episodes every year because I like the holiday themed episodes. I think they're fun. I think we have a lot of we get a lot of enjoyment out of just kind of randomly bullshitting about things anyway throughout the year. And the holidays kind of give us something to focus on. From what we've seen in our algorithms, it looks like people tend to enjoy these. However, this year has been a pain in the ass. We were looking like, what are we going to talk about for Halloween this year, right?
Everything 2021, like,
yeah.
Blame it on the supply chain and the, whatever. Let's go.
Yeah. All of our good ideas are stuck in a trailer or
a cargo ship offshore.
Yeah. So I was like, I kept asking you and Eric and everybody, like, even people at work. I'm like, all right, we've got a Halloween episode coming up, and I'm trying to think of what to talk about. And the first thing I thought about was like an opening question kind of thing, right? It was like, what scared you as a kid, or what you thought was going to be a bigger deal as a kid, and we're going to get into those. But then that's not enough for a full episode, so I wanted to like use that to roll into something bigger. So then I told you, since it's just me and you, we'll kind of brainstorm, we'll figure something out. And after the last time we recorded with Eric, I went back and I was looking at all of our episodes over the last 2.5 years now. We've been doing this 3 years. We've been doing this a while now.
Yeah.
And I checked every Halloween episode and I realized, holy shit, we've done like everything. We did like, we kind of went like ballistic because initially my ideas were, hey, it's October. We should kind of cram in as much creepy Halloween-y shit throughout the month of October, right? Something should be, well, hindsight being what it is, it probably should have been like an opening little couple of questions or some random shit, like a small topic each episode, and then get into like a Geekly Weekly or something, right, to kind of keep the Halloween feel, but like save some of these big things. Because like 1 month, I think it was 2 years ago, is when Eric and I did the Zombie Palooza, where we hung out at his house for 4.5 fucking hours talking about zombies. But then the very next week, we did werewolves. The week after that, we did vampires. So like we've gone through like a lot of the scary shit.
We did the sort of Halloween monster mash, right? Like
we pitted all the
Freddy versus Pennywise, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, and Pennywise won, right?
Pennywise won, yeah.
And that's another one like that we can at least revisit later on and add other monsters in, because we didn't do every monster. We could kind of break out the wheel again and do something like that. I don't know. So there's still some random ideas, but we've done like a lot of really cool topics. So this year, I was like stuck. I just had a brain fart and I couldn't think of anything. So I was just firing random questions at you in the chat, and you were like, yeah, I just like that. Let's just make it a smorgasbord of shit and we'll just talk. So that's where, okay, this is Halloween Havoc. We're just going to roll through a bunch of random dumb shit about Halloween. And you guys, if, the 5 or 6.5 of you that are listening, get online when you listen to this and comment on YouTube, comment on our website. Let us know what you think of some of these things. Let us know what scared you as a kid, that kind of shit. So with that being said, let's get into that one. Sure. What scared you as a kid?
So when I was a kid, I saw Jaws and The Swarm within like a week of each other. And so I used to have these nightmares about a giant shark and a swarm of killer bees fighting each other. Like, there was a long time when I was a kid, like I wouldn't let my arm dangle over the side of the bed because I thought Jaws was coming.
Yeah, me either.
So I guess put down like invisible sharks.
Land shark. Turns out to be a really good beer.
Land shark. let's see, what else scared me as a kid? I was a latchkey kid.
Shark doo 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 doo. Sorry. Again.
I was a latchkey kid, so being home alone didn't bother me. But if my mom was late, significantly later than like what I thought, like I got super freaked out. So that scared me. Old people scared me, like really old people.
Yeah. Yeah. Growing up in New York, my father was a detective and he was working a lot. So we saw him like on weekends and shit like that, you know. Um, so it was mostly us and our mother, and then they got divorced when we were a little bit older, so we weren't too young. We were like about 10 or 11 or whatever. Um, so like being left home alone, much like you, we were either our mother was home or we were latchkey kids. So that part wasn't the part. But what I wrote down there, being left alone, was like I distinctly remember, and it was my own asshole self that did it. We were playing at a park by my kindergarten, and my parents were like, "Come on, it's time to go home. We're gonna go home and eat dinner or whatever." And I was like, "Okay." And I just kept on playing on the swings, whatever I was doing. And then finally, after like the third time, my father told me to, let's go. He was like, "All right, we'll see you later." And I looked up, and like their car was leaving. Oh yeah, no, my father was an asshole.
He was not playing.
He literally went around the corner, and just parked on the other side because he knew I was a fucking idiot. So I was just watching where the car went, and I never looked like he went around the corner. I didn't know what streets were. So he just sat there for like about 2-3 minutes watching me panic, like trying to figure out what the fuck I was gonna do because I had no idea how to get home. So it was like that kind of shit, like just like looking up and like your parents are gone, like that shit. I'll go in like reverse order of how fucking freaked out I was, but like that one, when we used to visit my mother's sister, my aunt, in Brooklyn, their house, when you would go from the kitchen into the bathroom, there was like a little quick turn, and there was like bedrooms and the bathroom, like as you went around that corner. So when you turn around that corner to go into the bathroom, on the left-hand side of the wall, my cousin Nicole, my brother Mike, and I used to always think it was this demon mouth or something, like a ghost mouth. It was like this little, it looked like a monster mouth that was like just kind of open, but it was lit up on the wall. And we were little, and we would like run past it into the bathroom and then run past it on the way out.
Right.
And we would like dare each other to like put our finger near it, And it wasn't until I was like much older that looking back, I realized, again, I'm a fucking idiot. Which, I mean, you've known for years. Uh, it was a reflection of a street light that was bouncing off of, there was a picture on the other side of the hall, so the little light would hit the mirror, the glass pane on the picture, and reflect onto the wall. So it just looked like this ghostly light on the wall, and all three of us were fucking terrified of it. And then the last thing that petrified me was, it was only when I was alone, right? It was like if my mother would say, run down to the basement and hit refresh on the dryer, or move the clothes from the washer to the dryer, or get me this out of the freezer, because we had a big freezer in the basement, whatever. Because you'd have like the light on the stairs was kind of okay, but it was like way far up, and you were little, so the stairs were like whoop, way up there, and the light was at the top. You'd have to shut all the basement lights out, or your father would fucking kill you.
Right.
And then you had to run up to the top of the stairs, because there were light switches on either end, but you sure as fuck weren't going to shut it off at the bottom.
Yeah.
That was your only light source at the top of those stairs. So we would always, my brother too, we would start to, like, when we were little, we'd be like, you want to come down to the basement with me? And it was funny because my father had eventually finished the basement, and like basements in Staten Island were kind of cool because it was all concrete down there, they were cooler feeling. But he put in like a little carpet down there, and finished like paneled the walls because it was the 80s. And well, yeah, 70s going to the 80s. And he put in like 2 toy boxes for us, and we had like all our shit down there. We'd go down there and play video games, and all that would be cool until it was nighttime and your mother asked you to go down there to go do something, and you had to go there by yourself. And fuck that. I don't know how many times I ran up those stairs at breakneck speed, almost killing myself, just to make sure that whatever the fuck was down there didn't get me.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandparents.
You always hear noises too, like the water heater or something. Yeah. And when you're little, you didn't know what the fuck it was. Man, good.
Yeah, my grandparents' basement was like that in Pittsburgh, and it was concrete, but it was damper down there. It was all concrete floor, and there was a really steep set of stairs, light at the top, and so as you got farther in the basement, like that light didn't make it all the way down there, and those were the parts of the basement that scared me.
Yes.
And then you could go from the basement to the garage, and then down the hill in their house. And so when you could come in that way and come up the basement stairs. But yeah, washing machine was down there. There was a kind of one of those utility sinks.
Yep.
Yeah, all the, and all this stuff that my grandfather had, like all these electronic parts and pieces down there. Yeah, that room freaked me out. This other thing that scared me when I was a kid. So we called her Aunt Helen. I don't know if she was really an aunt. She was somehow related to my grandmother. I don't know if she was like her cousin or something like that. Her name was Helen. She was really old.
We had family like that. Anyone in the next generation, even though it was a cousin, was an aunt. Yeah,
it was an aunt. Yeah, and she would come for holidays, and she was. When you're a kid, like really old people, really wrinkly people, like they're terrifying. And she had this ring. And it was this red, like that in Jurassic Park, that the mosquito that is packed in the amber,
right,
which is where they extracted the dinosaur DNA. She had a ring that was this red, almost like amber, and it looked like a spider in it. It was some kind of black. I don't know what it was, but I thought as a kid, it was a spider, and she wanted to hug me, and I'm looking at this spider hand, and I'm like, no.
That wasn't an ant. That was a straight up witch, dude.
Yeah, Aunt Helen and the spider ring, the red spider ring, terrifies me. Like to this day, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. So and it's funny to look back on that kind of shit too, because I'm just like, because I get it too. Like Noah is sometimes afraid to. Because like we don't have basements in Florida, and I sometimes miss that because like in New York they go like the full length of the house,
Yeah.
Like when you came down those stairs, you came from the back of the house was where the kitchen was on the main floor, and you come down one short set of stairs to a side door that was by the driveway, because you had to walk up a few steps to get in the front door, so you were a little bit raised from street level when you were on the first floor. When you got to the landing where the side door was, there was a lot of people would come in their side door and never use their front door. Like my father would always come in the side door and take his shoes off and shit. But that's where you would turn the light on and go down the longer set of stairs. And to the right was that, like you said, the utility room that had the washer dryer, the hot water heater, the deep sink, and a big stand-up freezer. But if you made a left from the stairs, there was a big ass closet that went under the stairs, and then there was that's like where my father had all the Christmas decorations and shit, and he also had some in the attic. But then there was like that giant playroom, and then right toward the front of the house, immediately under the front part of the house, was a little area that was like, I don't know, 5 feet deep tops, and it was where my father kept all his tools, and he had shelves of shit and whatever for the house. And that was where there was like a little sump pump area that whatever. But yeah, so it was just like this whole big ass area that part of it I kind of missed. But I mean, like in hindsight though, like when I think about like my house now, at least, and then I look, like if I go back and I look at like Zillow for like my old address, I mean, the square footage on my house here down in Florida is significantly more.
Right.
So the fact that I don't have a basement is like minuscule compared to what I've got now. But just that feeling of having that basement to kind of hang out in sometimes is like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
There's some things about growing up that way that's just like different.
Yep.
But yeah, so
You were
speaking of,
you were saying something about Noah. Noah is
oh, he's definitely afraid to go upstairs
so are my kids.
by himself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it's funny because mentally to me, I'm like, well, going down to the basement, you're like going down into like a dungeon or whatever. You're going upstairs, you're going to the light. You go, but
Right.
especially if it's dark, fuck that. He's like,
Yeah.
can you come with me? Or can you go up and get me this? Or I'm like, just go.
Yeah.
And
I have to do the thing where I'll be like, I'll stay at the bottom step and
Yeah.
nothing will happen. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta do that all the time. Or I'll just like, half the time I'll go to the bathroom up in my bathroom up there and I'll leave this one open for anybody. So I'll just be like, all right, come on, I go to the bathroom anyway. And I'll walk up with them.
Yeah.
Because I get it. Because I was petrified until I don't know how old to go down to that basement. So I'm like, I know where he gets it from. All right. So yeah, on that, as you get older, right?
Yep.
Growing up the way we grew up in the 80s, because we didn't have the internet at all. So it wasn't like, and we didn't have like smart devices where you could just look shit up all the time. So you just like what you saw was what
you had them. It was called an encyclopedia, and
yeah,
maybe you had a set, but you didn't go look through like
some dude in a cheap suit came by and sold them to your mother.
Sell them to
yeah, and you get like one a month. So if you had a project on anything that started with PR, you were fucked until that book got there. Because they didn't come in order either. You just got random. Eventually, you got the whole set. Thanks for reminding me of that. This is going to be a Halloween / growing up in the 80s episode.
That's right.
This is just me and Paul, so fuck it. But you only had like what you saw on TV or what you read in comic books or whatever as your guide to the world, right? So, and again, we've established that I was a little idiot who grew up to be a bigger idiot. There were things that when I was a kid, I thought were going to be way more of a problem for me. Like, just because of fucking movies and shit. Like for me, I thought I was guaranteed I was going to get my ass caught in quicksand.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
like that was growing up in the 80s. Everybody was petrified they were going to like die in quicksand.
Yep.
And if you didn't die in quicksand, you were begging your parents to get a rope ladder for your room if you were on the second floor because your house was guaranteed to catch fire.
Right.
Everybody was going to die in a fire.
The thing about quicksand, though, if I think back about it, the quicksand was like, it was defined little puddle of quicksand, but somehow went down endlessly, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like you were walking along and you stumble into the quicksand and then it slowly takes you down. And I'm like, but 2 feet away from you is solid land. Like, why can't you get there?
Yeah. People would have to grab like a vine.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they were in an area that vines were aplenty.
Right.
They would be able to grab a vine or a tree root or something.
Yeah.
Pull themselves out, right?
But like, how deep were those pits? Because you think, I'll just, what is it? 5 feet, 6 feet?
It was 4 feet across. You could like reach over. Yeah.
You should, in theory, be able to swim through it.
It was like people dug graves, but twice as deep.
Right.
And you just got stuck and you just sank. And and it was like, it was in every show.
Yeah.
It was in every show, every cartoon. It was all over the place. One of the worst ones for me, though, and to this day, I really can't watch that scene. But in the Never-Ending Story, when when they're in the pit of despair or wherever they're at, when Atreyu is going across on his journey and he loses his horse, Artax, into the I think it's the forest of despair or the pit of despair, whatever it is, but he's sinking in quicksand. And the horse just gives up and he loses his horse in this quicksand. And I'll never forget that friggin' scene. It was crazy. Do you remember it?
No.
Oh,
it's been so long since I've seen that movie. I don't know that I've seen it all the way through.
I remember that. And I will say, the funniest thing I've ever seen in relation to that scene was at a Comic-Con. someone's 12-year-old fucking kid dressed up like a Treyu and had a horse's head and would put the horse's head in random spots throughout the Comic-Con on the floor and act out the whole scene.
Right.
And people were like, what are you doing? Like you're traumatizing like 30-year-old nerds. And,
that's great.
But it was the most amazing thing ever. Like people were cheering for him because it was the most epic costume ever.
Right.
But, like there was so many people that were like just taken back to their like childhood, like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So what about you? What else did you think was gonna be a bigger deal when you got older?
So back to what scared me when I said I saw Jaws and the Swarm in the same week or 2-week period. I thought killer bees were going to be a bigger problem. Like I remember hearing these Africanized killer bees were coming, and they were going to take over our regular honeybees, and they're super aggressive, and this was it. I mean, in the pandemic, we got murder hornets, which I guess is close, but
yeah.
Killer bees, the killer bee takeover didn't happen.
Yeah, the murder hornets didn't stick around too long either. No. When I saw you typing this on the doc, the first two things popped into my head simultaneously. One was Wu-Tang Clan, Killer Bees on a Swarm, right? The little lyrics,
right?
Because I'm from Staten Island, and an image of the Killer Bees from the WWF wrestling back in the 80s.
Yep.
Just two guys in short little black and yellow shorts. And as you were typing it, that's all that popped in my head was them and their song, or the Wu-Tang Clan song. And I was like, what the fuck's he talking about?
Weren't the Killer Bees was that B. Brian Blair?
B. Brian Blair and Jumping Jim Brunzell.
Okay. So, funny story. B. Brian Blair is like a county commissioner over in Tampa, or was a county commissioner over in Tampa.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Wouldn't have known.
No.
I hadn't thought about them in years until you typed. It's just amazing sometimes, or a little weird how my mind works, where it's just like shit just pops in there. And you wonder why Heather just side eyes me half the time, because that right there, that's the perfect glimpse into living with me. That's the kind of shit that just pops in my head, like just random dumb shit. Most of the time it's funny. Sometimes not. Yet there they are.
There they are. I just looked it up on YouTube. I just Googled it, and the picture of them in their wrestling trunks doing
that's the exact shake.
Yeah.
That one, the main one, the big one is the one that popped right into my head.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. And then the last thing that I thought was going to be a bigger deal, and probably because I grew up watching horror movies with my older cousins, because when you were in the 80s, there was no like, is this appropriate for their age? There was, the whole family was going to watch Friday the 13th. And if a pair of tits popped on the screen, your aunt or your mother told you to shut your eyes or hide your eyes. That was it. But murder and all that other shit,
that's fine.
Perfectly fine, right?
That's fine.
So I thought serial killers were going to be a fucking problem, right? Like Michael Myers.
They're not a problem. They're not a problem.
They're not a problem. Because, and again, as I was growing up too, like we actually had like on the news, you had like the Zodiac killer and shit like that. So I thought it was going to be like all day long. You're just going to be hearing about serial killers.
Okay.
No, good.
I think that if you talk about like the idea of a Jason or a Freddy, like doesn't really scare me. The horror movie person that scared me the most is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
Like the idea of Hannibal Lecter is way scarier than a Jason or a Freddy or even Michael Myers, like a some sort of, nonstop monster that you cannot kill. Like
before he became supernatural.
Yeah.
In 4 and 5 and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. But a Hannibal Lecter is terrifying, right? Like really smart.
Looks like anybody.
Right. Correct.
And next thing you know, he's eating your brain with a spoon.
Yep.
Or he's feeding you your own brain.
He's feeding your brain. Right. Right. Yeah. Like a number 2. Yeah. Terrifying. That's way scarier.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, ironically, like you said, they're not out there. I mean, like nowadays, like you turn on the news, or like me, like on my lunch break, or like in the morning when I have my coffee, I'll open up like MSN News or whatever just to see articles and shit. There are so many, and I'm 100% blaming COVID, and I don't know, like a deterioration in at least American society, but COVID, people being locked in has done something to society where everyone is like just rage quitting other people's lives. Like, like
Right.
with the road rage, we've talked about that, right? Road rage, like you can't beep at anybody anymore because you're probably gonna get shot. It's crazy.
Right.
But I've read so many articles, and it will be like back to back as you hit that next arrow, like mother kills infant child, this one kills wife and kids. This I was like, holy shit! Like everybody's killing their families, like left and right. It's weird. It's
Yeah. Most people were enjoying their, 8 to 10 hours out of the house every day and then they got locked together, like, some of you got to go. Um,
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all about thinning the herd, but I was kind of hoping like we'd find a way to like, take all the warning labels off of shit and kill some of the dumb ones.
yeah.
Not to say that like, some of these dumb ones aren't killing each other off right now, because some of them are. But like it's heartbreaking to see how many, like, this woman threw her 10-month-old kid across the room into a wall. Like people are crazy now. And it's I don't know how you curb this and get back to
Right.
normalcy.
From time to time, I'm reminded that I go through too much of life just sort of like everything's gonna be fine, we'll be fine, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then New Year's Eve this year, when it turned 2021, there was a story about I don't know, these kids in New York, 15 to 16-year-old, just sort of went nuts on a guy.
I think I remember that.
Right, and just like started jumping on his car and hit him and stuff like that, and like trying to pull him out. And I just it clicked, like I'm not prepared for something really scary to go down in a public place, right? So like movie theater, restaurant, like there have been enough mass shootings and stuff in the news in the last 4 years that it's less of an isolated incident than I'd like to think it is.
Right.
And I need to spend more time thinking about like what would happen if, right, and being prepared and thinking about like where are the exits in this, in whatever place I'm in. Like, how do I get out of here? How do I make sure my family gets out of here? Are we safe right this minute?
Right.
Wherever we are. So yeah, that's the stuff that scares me. Like if we're talking about like stuff that scares me today, like that's what scares me today.
Yeah, society as a whole, and you've known me for quite a few years now. I'm a people person. You know how much I love just people in general. I'll stop and talk to whoever. It's one of the reasons we started this podcast, because I wanted to reach people, and nobody's fucking reaching back. But
we reach tens of people every month.
We reach tens of people. I love that. Thank you. But society, especially now in our country here, is terrifying. Like this is the reason why I say, oh, we're building a giant garden in our yard, and I want to buy a cow and a pig and whatever. And it's a combination of supply lines are starting to suck really bad. I don't trust our government, and people are just fucking scary. I want to be self-sufficient as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. I'm just like I'm done with like people.
Our wives are
outside of this podcast. I'm done with people.
Yeah, our wives are a lot alike in that they are prepper adjacent. Like, my wife's not a full-on prepper, but she's close.
Yeah.
And she's always like, we've got stores of stuff, food and whatever. She's constantly saying we don't have enough ammunition for our very legally purchased and all.
I do everything legally, but
like we have I don't know, we have several hundred rounds, and she's like, I don't think we have enough.
why I love your wife.
Yeah.
So we get along.
And so we both took, at the beginning of the year, we both took pistol classes, like not only to get concealed weapons permits, but like tactical pistol classes, which included like applying and removing tournaments.
Good. I was about to say that you need a medical class too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have kits that have tourniquets and slings and all that kind of stuff in it. And so we're So welcome to Prepper Talk with Paul and John.
I know, right? Yeah. I was about to say, like, when the shit really hits the fan, I'm gonna come over there with my truck. We're gonna load all your shit into my truck and your car, and you're all gonna come over here because I got the big house. And we're just gonna make a last stand here.
Yep.
All right. So yeah. So serial killers, fuck you. You scare the hell out of me. On to what I think is, again, welcome to 80s talk with John and Paul. Because every time you and I get together, we tend to school Eric, and it's funny because he's not that much younger than us.
No, he's
like
not.
Some of the shit that we grew up with, he knows, but then there's other stuff that he laughs and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I would be curious to know how much of this he would have remembered as a kid. But we want to compare Halloween in the 80s when we grew up. So I guess like late 70s, early 80s. Because I can vaguely remember the late 70s. You're a couple of years older than I am. So it's mid to late 70s into like the mid 80s, I think, is like that decade there versus today. And the first thing that like we talked off air was, I wish I would have brought up that YouTube because like I told you, like every holiday season, we know I love Halloween. Because of Heather, I've grown to really love Christmas. There was a time there in my life that I really didn't care about Christmas too much. But then I married her, and it's like being married to Mrs. Claus. So it's like we've got decorations everywhere, and it's it puts me in a good mood. So I've grown into more of the the fat, jolly Santa-like guy that I am. And I love Christmas too. So I love, like, from the minute you get ready for Halloween, like October 1st, all the way through New Year, like this whole time of year, I love, right? I mean, but what's not to love? You've got multiple holidays, you've got football, right? So much shit, right?
And they're all excuses to eat. Like Halloween's all about candy.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's all about overconsumption of turkey, stuffing, dressing, beer, whatever.
Which ironically, you just reminded me of how I was going to introduce this episode. It was like, this is our Halloween smorgasbord. Kind of like when you get your Halloween candy at the end of the night, you dump it out. It's going to be a little bit of everything. That's what this episode is. So yeah, so like I love this entire season, right? So I tend to immediately in October I start watching horror movies because I love horror movies. And then after Halloween time frame, I'll get into like Christmas movies, shit like that, because the kids like them, and now I'm getting to that like sappy old dad age where I like watching the different Christmas, and you have traditions, right, that you do among different holidays. So in my tradition always starts with October. It's always Halloween type or horror movies or whatever. So, and I've got a handful that I watch all the time, and then I always try to find new ones. But then the other thing I do that I was telling you about was I get on YouTube, and I don't know if it's like a nostalgia thing because my parents died when I was young, so I yearn for shit from when I was a kid, But I get on YouTube, and YouTube is a plethora of videos on like growing up in the 80s, and you'll see like Halloween costumes from the 80s and like when we were growing up, and they'll show you like different commercials from the 80s. You can just do toy commercials around Christmas, or they'll just do random commercials around Christmas, and you can just like type in anything from like when you were growing up and find this shit. And I go down those rabbit holes for like, an hour a night sometimes, like once a week, easy through like this whole fall and winter season.
Yeah.
sitting there on my phone watching this shit and wasting time where I should be doing something else. But I went down that rabbit hole, and one of the first ones I found in researching this episode was the old school 70s and 80s Halloween costumes. And there was a brand name. It was something like Bob something about, it was a specific guy. It was a little name in the corner of the box. But you'll remember when we were growing up, you would tell your mother what you wanted to be for Halloween. And if it was Casper the Friendly Ghost or Batman or whatever, you would always go to the store and they would have the costume hung up on a hook so you could see what it would look like. And then all these little flimsy ass cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I guess kind of like cake boxes now, right? Like they're very thin, even thinner than a cake box you get now.
Ben Cooper.
Thank you. There you go. I knew if I kept saying
name, Ben Cooper is the name of the brand of Halloween costume that it was.
Yes, that was it. Thank you. And there was like little cellophane plastic window that you could see the mask.
Yep.
And then underneath the mask would be the plastic costume, right? Mm-hmm. But it was always this cheap plastic mask with these fat little eye holes that you can see out of, and an elastic band that was stapled to the mask. Mm-hmm. And let's say you were Casper or Woody Woodpecker. Your costume was that mask, and then this plastic cellophane type of, I don't know what you would call that material. It was not like vinyl. It was like a plasticky.
Yeah, it was plastic. It's sort of plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it unfolded almost like cling wrap. Like it would stick to itself. You'd have to like unfold it, and there were just two armholes, and it was like a
and leg holes.
Yeah. Or you just have one big hole.
Oh yeah.
Put it over your head. It was a head and armholes, or you would have, it was more, if you got a little bit more high end, like that commercial showed, from $1.99 to $3.99, you can get these costumes, or whatever. If you got like the $5.99 one, you had one that had like shorts or some weird shit, whatever. But it would be like Casper, you'd have Casper's face and then like a picture of Casper floating on your chest. Or Woody Woodpecker would be a Woody Woodpecker face, and then a picture of Woody Woodpecker out of the cartoon. And I laughed because I was telling you earlier, like I would try to avoid those like the plague and try to find ones that didn't just have a picture of the character. If you found like the Batman or the Superman, it still had that cheap little plastic mask, but at least the costume itself looked like their outfit with a cape or something, right? Like Spider-Man looked like his Spider-Man
suit,
costume, right? His suit. Yeah. So at least you got something out of that, and that's the one that had the leg holes and stuff, right? Yeah. But
so I'm showing John a screenshot of some of these costumes, and so you see like Sylvester is the mask, and it looks like it looks like Sylvester's face, but the costume itself, there's two armholes and there's two leg holes at the bottom. What look like pants are black. What looks like a shirt is yellow, and there's a picture of Sylvester on it. So it's not even you're trying to be Sylvester's body, right? Mm-hmm. It is just that. And then the underdog one is Underdog's face. It's a blue looking shirt with a picture of Underdog, and it says Underdog.
Yeah.
And then what would look like red pants. Like it's not even Underdog's costume, right, as a hero. And then
right.
Those were super bad. By the time these are 70s ones, I think by the time you go into the 80s, like it started getting better, and you start to get like Batman,
Batman, Superman.
Batman's was Batman's outfit, right? His costume, or Superman's costume, or G.I. Joe. It looked like fatigues.
Yeah, I think a week or two ago we talked about, or I talked about toying with the idea of just ripping this video that we're doing right now and just dropping that on YouTube so you can at least see what we're doing to try to entice more followers. This might be a perfect episode for that. We just share a screen. So we'll have to keep that in mind, that if this works out, we'll keep it in mind for next time so we don't share anything, any personal info like, hi, here's my bank account in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got nothing in it, but go ahead. So they were really cheap. And the masks would one, the elastic band would last maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it would pull out of that staple. So then you would just be a fucking 7-year-old kid or 6-year-old kid walking around with a plastic bag around yourself.
Right.
Your mother would try to fix it. It wouldn't really work right.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that mask, you couldn't breathe for fuck.
No.
Like,
And you couldn't really see. It cut your peripheral vision off, right? So you're very like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Which is weird as a kid.
In front of you. You literally look like the opening scene of Halloween, where it's just all you see is they did a really good job with that, because that was like go back and watch the original Halloween, and that shot, that's what it was like growing up with these costumes. You can only see right in front of you. And, yeah, you're about to do it.
And the mouth of the thing had a very little hole in it, so you could breathe through it. But like you heard your breath, like you were.
Yeah, they do a good job of that in that movie too. You can hear them breathing, but then you would get the little pool of sweat.
Yeah.
Built up, and because the chin part came under your face, so you would get a pool of sweat in there because you were sweating under this piece of plastic. And then anytime you like lifted it up to try to breathe and talk to somebody, you would just drip your own sweat on each.
Yeah.
And never mind, like when you would try on somebody else's mask.
Oh yeah.
Their own sweat. Right?
Thank God there wasn't COVID then.
No, right. Thank God. So yeah. So those masks just sucked horribly.
And then I think we talked about this before we started recording, but like we both grew up north where there were actual change of seasons. And so this has never happened to my kids, but in late October in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, in New York, where you grew up, it was cold. And so like you had to make a decision. Yeah. You had to make like a real decision of like, am I wearing a coat over this, or am I just going to freeze my ass off, or do I have to wear a hat or gloves or whatever? And so am I, now not only do I have this cheap Casper outfit on, but now I have to have my coat on over it, right? And my gloves on.
A couple of these costumes, I got lucky. I think I was just the right size where, and then again, like you said, depending on the weather, it would be cold enough for like either long sleeves, so you could put long sleeves on underneath it. And my mother would put like a set of thermals and then another shirt, and then I'd be warm enough,
No.
Or the costume would be just big enough for me to fit like a light jacket underneath it, so you can at least still see the costume. But yeah, there were so many kids, and I bet if you go back to your picture, you'll find a picture of a kid with a goddamn jacket over.
Yeah.
I can go through all my old pictures, and I'll have to look and post some of them on the website. I'm sure there's one of me in like a Batman costume with a jacket on over it because it was fucking freezing. Now that, compare that to today before we get on to some of the other shit.
Okay.
Dude, like now you've got like all these like crafty moms, which my wife is one of them. She's, she makes tumblers and this and that, whatever. I don't think she'll go as full blown as trying to make a costume. She's like bought Noah something and then added things to it, to kind of like create a costume. But like you've got these moms now that are like sewing full blown costumes, and like Halloween costumes.
Like they're the wardrobe department of a movie set. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like I every year except for this one, because we're all going out together as a family. I'll tell you guys about that later. Every year I would sit, like Heather would take Noah out and I would sit here, and either one of my neighbors would come over and we just sit in the driveway with a couple of big bowls of candy and just drink beer and listen to scary music and give out candy to the kids. Typically that's like kind of what we do in this neighborhood. We'll like all pick a driveway every year, and like 3 or 4 of us, and we'll have bowls on the table and be like, okay, pick one from every bowl, that kind of thing, right? So that way we can all hang out and chill, and then the kids just still get the candy, right? These costumes that come by, I'm like, holy shit. And even the store-bought ones.
I was going to say, the ones you buy at like Costco or whatever, full, you get the full Spider-Man outfit, and I'm surprised it doesn't have a web shooter in it. It's, but like the actual mask, full thing, muscles in. You can get the one with the muscles in it.
Yeah, like Noah growing up now, obviously he's outgrown that phase of his life. But when he was 2, 3, 4, 5, he had, even just outside of Halloween, just because he liked to play dress up and dress up as superheroes and shit. He had so many random fucking costumes and a big.
Oh yeah, must have.
He was like, yeah, Thor and Black Panther and this and that, whatever. It was just like he had so many of them that were cool, and you can just get them. I mean, the pricing isn't unreasonable on them.
Right? No, it's not.
Like I joked about like ours being like $3 when we were kids, but you could tell they were $3. Like,
right.
Now again, like $3 back then was probably like $10 now, or whatever, whatever inflation is, probably even more. But still, like you can tell they were cheaply made, right? Like the I guess not technology, but kind of like just like how now we've got cell phones and plasma TV or LED TVs or whatever compared to tube TVs. The manufacturing that goes into this shit nowadays compared to when we grew up, like holy shit, it's so cool.
Yeah.
To see these kids coming around with these costumes and creative. Like parents get like really into it. Like where you get like entire family themed costumes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, have you guys done any yet?
I've done more of that, like going to MegaCon. MegaCon not the one we just did, but last year, like Presley was Batgirl, Coleman was Batman, like gray and blue Batman, Robin. Old school, and I was Robin. So we've done that.
I missed the Dick Ward tidies. You really should have. You should have went for it.
I figured they wouldn't let me in.
Why not?
But we had some friends. We just did a thing at our church.
I saw Robin's eggs. Sorry.
We just did a thing at our church, and they had like different parts in different themed rooms. They gave out candy, and one family, like everybody had a Moana theme, right? So like the dad had the Maui bodysuit with the tattoos on it. One of the girls was Moana. Like they have 4 or 5 kids. One was Moana. One was Taka. One was the pig. One was the chicken. Hey hey.
That's awesome.
One was Tafiti. Yeah, it was really cool. So.
Yeah, we did one year. I'm trying to remember where the hell we went. Disney, I think. Yeah, it was Disney's their little Mickey's Halloween.
Not So Scary, yeah.
Yeah. And Inside Out had just come out, and Noah was like, I'm Anger. I've already got the red hair. I want to be Anger. So we decided to do like a whole family thing. And my sister was in town, so there was like 4 or 5 of us, and we all dressed up like the characters, I got like a little Argyle vest, and I was Fear.
Right.
Heather was Sadness. No, yeah, she was Sadness, and then my sister was Joy, and then so, and it wasn't like spectacular. Like you see some that you're like, damn, they really nailed that, Yeah. Ours were decent, but they were fun. We did the Halloween cruise a couple years ago. Remember that when we left town, and we did the Disney Halloween cruise. But there we would just we did Fortnite, where because no one wanted to be Fortnite, so we did like a bunch of Fortnite characters, and then I was just a giant pink teddy bear walking around the Disney cruise, and everybody loved it. They thought it was great. I was this fat pink giant teddy bear walking around the cruise. The best costume I saw on that cruise though was Fat Thor, and Heather turned around, looked right at me. She looked right at me, and she was like, "Damn it, we missed an opportunity right there."
Yeah.
I was like, "Thanks, hon. I love you too." She's not wrong. She's not wrong because I can piece of beard and but yeah, I could have rocked it, but this guy rocked it pretty good. Now this year, because we have our foreign exchange student Christopher from Germany, there's a lot of things like he hasn't done over in Germany. He knows Halloween, and I'm sure they do shit with Halloween over there, but it's not as big. So he asked like things like, "Are we gonna carve pumpkins?" I was like, yeah, we'll do that. Um, but he said, "Could I buy a Halloween costume and go with Noah?" He goes, "I know I'm 18." I said, "Yeah, you're only in the country for a year. You can take him out." I said, "If you want to walk around the neighborhood with him, yeah." And he said, "Okay." He said because he had a specific costume in mind that he wanted, and he said it was too expensive to buy it when he was in Germany. But looking on Amazon, he said I could totally get it here. It's very cheap. And he wouldn't tell us what it was, and it shows up, and it's the classic inflatable T-Rex dinosaur that you see on
Oh yeah.
YouTube, right? The little brownish, reddish
Yeah.
brown one, right? And we laughed, and Heather went, "Why don't we all just walk around the neighborhood this year as dinosaurs? We'll buy a bunch of dinosaur costumes. They don't all have to be T-Rexes. We could be whatever, and we'll just all walk around the neighborhood like that. It'd be fun, like a whole pack of dinosaurs." And he was like, "Oh, that would be cool." And immediately Noah turns around and goes, "I don't want to be a dinosaur." I'm like, "Damn, how are you gonna shit all over like a whole family thing? Like we don't do this very often, but like your mother came up with a good idea."
He
He's
should
like,
be the Chris Pratt. He should be the Chris Pratt character from
"That's what he
Jurassic
is.
Park. Yeah. Okay.
That's what he is." Yeah. Because he was like, "I don't want to be one," and I said, "I've got a better idea. See, this is why you and I get along so well. This is why we're family." I said, "We'll all be dinosaurs, and he'll be Owen, Chris Pratt from Jurassic World." So
Yep.
we get a brown vest, little, like a bluish black T-shirt,
Mm-hmm.
a long sleeve, and some. He's got jeans, right, and he's done.
Yep.
I said, I'm even like tomorrow. I'm going to PetSmart to try to find one of those little behavioral clickers for the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a whole plan. Sunday, my neighbor Brian is going to stand outside with his phone and record us. I'm going to give him like the access to my garage to open it. And or well, I guess I don't have to. I'm going to be in the garage, but we're all going to be in the garage, and Noah's going to walk out front, and we're giving him my Bluetooth speaker and my phone in his bucket,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna like play. We'll play a bunch of shit, but we're gonna play the Jurassic Park theme song.
Right.
And he's gonna open the garage, and he's gonna do the whole like hand out with a clicky thing, and
Yeah,
we're
there
all
you
gonna
go.
come walking out.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Heather was like, "This might be the time we finally go viral on TikTok." Like, yeah,
Right.
probably. So yeah. So that's what we're doing this year. It's gonna be fun.
That's cool.
I'll send you guys a video. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Obviously, I guess I'll post it on our webpage too, so all of you can laugh at me. Share it with your friends. So now going back to parents nowadays are crazy. They're doing all these costumes. The other thing they're crazy about is fucking safety, right?
It seems weird to say it that way, but like when I was a kid, and I know when you were a kid, like my parents never went trick-or-treating with me. They were like, go.
No.
Be home by what, like whenever you're done, you're done. Like
when I was little, because they were afraid we were gonna get lost, they would walk with us, but they would like walk along the street with a drink in their hand or whatever. My mother would be walking down with her friends, they'd be smoking cigarettes in the middle of the street, and they'd let us go up to the houses, come back, go to the next house, and they would just walk. They wouldn't be walking along with us holding our hand or nothing.
Right.
You're on your own with your friends. Go get your candy. And I'm gonna be over here talking to my friend. Yeah. And that was it. And then once you got just a little bit older, where you knew your way home from like the next 10 blocks, they were like, "See ya."
Yeah.
Go trick or treating. And that's what I said. When we would go trick or treating when we were littler, there was a certain age, like the really little kids, because they did have at least parents with them, or the older kids just wouldn't fuck with the teeny tiny ones. But when you got to the tail end of trick or treating, if you got too far from your house, you had to watch out for the older kids, because like the older teenagers were running around. And you and I talked about it earlier. In New York, they called it bombing, and they would run around with cans of shaving cream and cartons of eggs and just pelting each other with this shit. And if you got too close to them, or you got outside of like too far from your house and you couldn't make a run for it, you getting pelted.
Yeah.
And I can remember one time, it was like one of the last times I went trick or treating. It was like the pillowcase thing. My brother and I were both zombies, and we would walk around with like one of our younger friends, and we got like about, I don't know, 5 blocks from our house, or whatever. We were just trying to like canvas the whole neighborhood as much as we could. And a couple of kids from a block away from me, or a couple of blocks away from me, like closer to where we were trick or treating, came up the street with, their shaving cream and their eggs and whatever, and or they just gotten done, and it was a bigger kid, and he came right at me and was like, let me see what you got. And I was like, no, like we're going home. We're done. And he kept coming at me, and he was bigger. I want to say he was a couple of years older than me, and he went to go grab me, and that was like one of the first times I stood up to like one of the bigger kids in the neighborhood, and then I want to getting a reputation in the neighborhood for being an asshole, uh, or at least maybe a little bit of respect from the older kids. But when he grabbed me, I like rocked back and just grabbed his bag, wrapped it one time around my hand, and I swung it as hard as I could and cracked him on the side of the head with it.
Right.
And he went back, and the three of us took off running. But after that night, like, he never fucked with me again. He just left me alone. But yeah, that was like my one. That was my first time dealing with like an older kid in any kind of like really serious. Like, most of the time, it was like we just avoided them because we were little, and But yeah, that was like my first. That was my entry into like that next level of childhood. Where I had to stand up for myself, and
it was like it felt sort of like almost like a mini version of the Purge. Mm-hmm. Like not anything, but like it was a little bit of anything goes. You knew there were older kids that were, if you were like,
at least to us, it looked like it.
Yeah, right. 6 or 7, like probably had a parent, trailing a little bit behind you, but maybe you didn't, or you were with an older brother or something like that. But if you were like 9 or 10, you were that age where like the 13-year-olds were there to mess with you.
Yeah.
Maybe, do the shaving cream thing. You going to bed? Okay. Maybe doing the shaving cream thing, maybe trying to steal the candy. You had to go stand up for yourself or learn to run. But it felt like if you got too far from home, you're like, all right, this is the scary part now. I kind of know where I am. This is farther out than we normally go. Like, let's go back.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was me, because I was like, I knew pretty much, like, I knew the general area. Like, I knew the few blocks right around my house, and we had just ventured out beyond that. Like, I knew how to get home, but after that altercation, I wasn't sure we were going to make it to the house. Right. So and that's like one of those things, like, I don't think about it often, but I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And
but how often do you, I think you dress up more often than I do. I don't Halloween dress up. I think I dress up more like, although I will say we have some friends that really like Halloween as well. And they do a costume party every year. And so they didn't do it last year because of the pandemic. But they did like a zombie prom one year, and they've done 80s prom. They've done a couple of different, we did steampunk. Gail and I were steampunk one year. So we do that sort of Halloween dress up, like for a party,
right?
For a more grown up party than like we've taken the kids downtown Winter Garden. Does something really cool. I don't think they're doing it this year, but we've done that several times lately, and in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and like, but I won't dress up for that. I'd rather dress up at MegaCon.
Yeah. Like, I would rather do that than Halloween. Just, I don't know. It depends. Like this year, if an opportunity pops into my head, like, an idea pops in my head, like the dinosaur thing, I'll run with it. But normally I won't dress up too much. Like I said, normally I'm just like Halloween, I'm sitting outside giving out candy. This year we're just gonna put the ball outside and hope some little asshole doesn't take all of it.
Right.
Put the little sign out there. Please take one. I'm watching you on my ring cam.
Yeah.
Be honest. Be nice. But yeah, I don't dress up too much. Even like the Comic Con, I might wear a T-shirt or something. But unless Noah like really wanted to dress up, but we haven't been to one with him in a while. I went alone a couple times, just because it was too much for him, like a lot of walking around. But you know, it's more the geek shit for us, where like I enjoy it. I know
Yeah.
your kids like it a little bit more than Noah does. He enjoys it, but he enjoys it when he can stop and buy shit. And I'm like, I totally get that, but you're looking at shit that's like a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like most of the shit there is overpriced sometimes too. So you're
Yeah.
like, I
And
don't
they have
want.
they have a sort of a limited comic knowledge, and they have a limited, like, they like Pokemon and a couple things.
Yeah.
So a lot of MegaCon is lost on them. Like, they don't think it's as cool as I do because they just don't know what it is.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, we grew up reading comics and,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's definitely lost on them. But yeah, so yeah, I dress up on occasion here and there. I would like to, as I'm getting older now, maybe like start to host Halloween parties or something, where you get people together and they all dress up.
Yeah.
They always look fun, but at the same time, they always look like work. All right, so yeah, so as the last thing in that 80s versus today that we talked about before we get into the rest of the shit was I just showed Paul a video of 80s moms versus today, and the 80s mom with the oh, we just gotta look through your candy for needles and razor blades. That was the big thing when we were growing up. Like, and it was a huge fear, and it was always the kid in the next town over.
Yep.
Bit into something, and
an apple, specifically an apple, and
specifically an apple.
I don't remember getting. I remember getting like boxes of raisins occasionally, yes, but I never remember getting fruit. Like, I don't remember getting an entire apple. Like,
once or twice, I remember someone doing like a wrapped candy coated apple, but it was typically somebody you knew.
Right.
They wouldn't.
Yeah. You weren't just going to get like an actual apple. Like, I remember sometimes, right, a friend would do like a candy apple or something like that.
Yeah, but all the parents were petrified of these news stories of razor blades, and I would love to, maybe we can do it for next year, look into these folklore of shit from Halloween and see if any of it has like a credible story to it.
Right.
Because I know my mother would be like, anything bigger than like a Rolo, she would look at, and like if it looked like it might be open or whatever, she'd throw it out.
And I don't remember that my whole life though. Like, I remember never thinking about that. And then in my like 11, 12, somewhere in there, so like early 82, 83, 84, somewhere in there, became the scare. But like before that, I don't remember that at all. Like, I don't remember that as thing as like.
Yeah, it was definitely an early 80 thing, because I was like, I'm a little younger than you, not what, 2 years, 3? I'm 46. You're
okay.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, so 5. Okay, whoop. Sorry. I'll get you a walker later.
Right.
Yeah, for me, it was when I was a little bit younger. It was so basically predominantly through most of my trick or treating, there was at least that vague scare of like, there could be some shit in there.
Yeah.
And it was mostly the news fault, really. Yeah. I guess that might have been the start of what we're going through now. But like, the news is paranoid about like random shit. And I remember my mother, at least like, if it was bigger, like a full-size Snickers bar or a full-size whatever, which were the houses you wanted to hit. Like, those are the ones who were like, we might have to go back there a second time.
So I wonder, the thing that I remember, I wonder if it's around the time, do you remember when Tylenol in the early 80s, there was like and they never found out who did it, but someone tampered with Tylenol and put cyanide in the Tylenol capsules.
I do remember that.
And this was before anything was safety sealed. And so if you're younger and you're listening to this, like, there was a day when stuff wasn't, the seals that you see on every package now, every package in the world, just about, like, that didn't exist. You could just open stuff and it opened and closed back up. No one would ever know you opened it.
Yeah.
But there were Tylenol poisonings, and Tylenol did like a really smart thing. Like, they pulled every single piece of Tylenol off the shelves everywhere across the entire country, and like really handled it well. And then they started safety sealing, and then since then everything's been safety sealed. And I wonder if you could time the sort of, when did parents start getting freaked out that maybe something was in a Halloween candy, if it's after that.
Yeah.
That was 1982.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because yeah. I mean, sure. I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, and again, it's always those again, this is pre-internet, which I say pre-internet like, word of mouth was worse, but sometimes it's not. Because I mean, look at what we're going through nowadays, right? But then it was like word of mouth, like, your parents would talk to each other and be like, oh, I heard that so and so, a few miles away, this kid got this or whatever, and and nobody knew, so it was just precautionary. But it wasn't a lot of it. Like, my mother would like breeze through it real quick, and then, okay, I don't see anything, so you should be fine. And well, and I survived, so it wasn't that big a deal. But that was, I remember that being a thing when I was a kid, was these razor blades and whatever. It was like you said, specifically razor blades and apples or whatever, but I never got an apple. Nowadays, these kids come home with, like, you'll never see like any, like, everybody. It's almost like everybody buys the same assortment of candy from Walmart or Target.
Yep.
Right. So they always come home with these bags full of the same shit. So that worry has kind of gone away.
Right.
So all right, yeah. So I was just finishing up that last part. All right. So you can't say Halloween in the 80s, or you'll ironically, what I talked about earlier about like this entire season, right? Probably one of the reasons I love this entire season, all the way from now until New Year, is when we were growing up, and Paul and I have talked about this time and time again. There was something different about growing up in the 80s, where you had like cartoons after school and cartoons on Saturday mornings, where you sit there and eat a big bowl of fucking cereal that was not good for you, and you watch, or maybe your mother decided she was going to actually make French toast or something, but you sit there and you watch cartoons for like hours. And then there was a specific time that the cartoons stopped, and you could watch like Godzilla or Abbott and Costello or Go Outside with Your Friends, and that was it, right? That was all we had in the 80s. But it was a standard, a staple of life, that every Saturday that was the same way, right? Every year you were guaranteed right around middle of October, all of a sudden you'd be watching TV and you would get, next Thursday on CBS, it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Oh, that's
and right, you see, see, and that's what you would do as a kid. You'd be like, oh, Charlie Brown's coming on TV. It's The Great Pumpkin. And you had all these Halloween specials. And it started there. And then it goes into, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever. And most of it was, Charlie Brown really kicked that. Like Peanuts did a bunch of specials that you just like every year you look forward to.
Those were the three big ones, right? It was Great Pumpkin, it was Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and the Charlie Brown Christmas special.
Yeah, with the sad little tree.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was funny because, again, like, we go back to when we were growing up. Now, when I was a kid, like when I was little, I remember my father getting like one of the first VCR, VHS, whatever. So, like, if you didn't have a tape to pop in there and record this shit, you missed it.
Yep.
And it was gone. So it was an event. Everything was an event on TV for us. So I thought our next thing that we were going to talk about was like the different Halloween specials that we grew up with. So the first thing I did was I Googled a list of Halloween specials. And holy shit. Like I'll share this on our website, but if you want something specific, don't just Google Halloween specials and click Wikipedia, because damn, like I shared that with you, and there are hundreds and hundreds of, but they go into like Halloween episodes of various shows throughout the years. You know, so one show could have 3 different episodes, whatever, right? And they're all like, this is a list of bam, like hundreds of episodes and TV specials and this and that and whatever. And then I found the Rotten Tomatoes one that we should probably just kind of stick with if I get my mouse to work. But just like, I'm gonna look at the Wikipedia one really quick. Yep, there it goes. Okay. There, all right. We've got hundreds of these things. I mean, you've got everything from Alvin and the Chipmunks. I remember those when we were kids, right? But then you get like later, you've got like Angry Birds and shit like that. I wish there was a way on here to sort it by year, because that would have been amazing. There was so many, like you had Casper came out, but the ones that I remember were kind of on this Rotten Tomatoes list of like 31 classic Halloween. I remember the Charlie Brown one. I remember there's a Garfield one. I think I remember the Disney. Disney didn't even make this list. Disney had about 2 or 3 that came out. One was like just their classic Halloween thing where they had it was a bunch of shorts, right? And one was Huey, Dewey, and Louie trick-or-treating to Uncle Donald and driving him crazy.
Right.
Another one, I think it had like Pluto or something in it.
But that was just one of their standard cartoons. That wasn't like a special, like the Toy Story.
Right, but then they started playing it every Halloween after like it gained popularity. Yeah. Right. Like they took all of them and they crammed them in together. But the other one, like the one they did was Sleepy Hollow. Remember Ichabod Crane?
Mm-hmm.
Where they had the songs and everything, and I can always remember watching that one as a kid and actually being kind of petrified, because I can remember him like sitting in the little restaurant or whatever, like the little tavern, and listening to the story of the Headless Horseman while he's thinking about going to see his fiance, and he's putting pepper or something on an egg, and he overdoes it. Do you remember that? Like he overdoes like whatever the fuck, like the top comes off and like he piles up pepper on this egg and pops in his mouth. And I just remember smoke coming out of his mouth or whatever. And I could always, that's one scene out of that I remember. And I remember just vaguely in my head, from this moment on, shit gets bad. And then like he's like on the donkey or whatever the fuck, the little mule that he's riding to try to go see his fiance, and that's when he runs into the Headless Horseman. And that's when Disney was like not afraid to be dark, right? Like they did shit. It was like it was creepy. Like the Headless Horseman's chasing him through the woods, and it ends vague. Like he's running, and he's supposed to. The whole story is if he can cross this bridge before the Headless Horseman gets him, he'll be safe. And he's riding this thing as fast as he possibly can, and he's almost across the bridge, and the Headless Horseman throws this pumpkin head, this flaming pumpkin head, at him. And the last thing you see in that cartoon is the pumpkin head flying at the screen. And it ends. That's it. It ends. So you're sitting there at like 7 going, maybe he made it. Right. Yeah, I'd like to think he made it, but I don't know. Right. Might have been like my first, the start of my love of horror, because damn, like that cartoon was fucking dark. Where you've got like, the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, right? Was just it's a cute story of Linus believes in this great pumpkin that will much like a Santa Claus for Halloween, right? He will
Right.
rise to the pumpkin patch and give little
Give the
kids who
candy.
believe candy and this and that, whatever. And he's got Lucy out there, and she's
Sally.
like Sally. Sorry, you go, whoop. Lucy's his sister. That got weird. He's got Sally, Charlie Brown's sister, out there to hang out with him because she loves him. And at some point, she finally figures out, "Oh, you just want me out here because you want me to suck your dick or something."
That's not the version I remember, but yeah.
It's actually a meme I saw not too long ago. Yeah. And he falls asleep and he thinks he sees a great pumpkin. It's really just Snoopy. Spoiler alert for the 70s. But yeah, it's cute. It's a cute Halloween story.
Yeah.
But there's so many of these that I remember watching as a kid. And as I was going over these again, I like to go down my nostalgia trip. And I'm just like, wow. And I forget about them. So then I get like so close to Halloween that I'm like, God, I got to try to cram some of these in with the kids. And I forget sometimes because you don't do that event TV anymore because everything is just everywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what are some of the ones you remember growing up with?
I mean, obviously, I remember the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I don't remember. I think I've seen the Headless Horseman one, but later in life. Like I don't remember it as a kid. I remember seeing it later. Actually, of the list that you sent, I've seen the Paul Lynde special more recently, and that's just a weird piece of television. Like, just randomly, there's a haunted house and there's a Kiss concert, and it's just Kiss just shows up and like plays a song.
He was a really weird guy. Like I don't do good impressions, but he's got that very distinct.
Here's the thing, like I remember him. He was on Bewitched.
Yeah.
He was the center square of Hollywood Square, of the sort of the classic Hollywood squares for years and years.
Yes,
and years.
that's where I remembered him from first.
And here's the thing: it's this weird thing happened back then. Like he was sort of flamboyant, and he had this very distinct voice, and mannerism, and he was gay, and no one knew it, like that, because that wasn't a thing in Hollywood. Like,
right.
And so they just thought he was.
They just thought he was eccentric.
Correct. Yeah.
And which now today you look back and you're like,
how did you guys not know that? Right.
Like the only other thing he could have done to hint you that, or to clue you in that he was gay, was suck dick in that middle square.
Correct. And so he does this special where he just has these co-stars just sort of show up, and he was like a character actor, and just this, yeah. And so it's a very weird special, but it was on Hulu like last year or maybe during the pandemic, so I saw it.
Yeah.
I remember.
Probably still not as weird as the Star Wars holiday special, but
no, it's not. And there's a new one that my kids like, Spookly the Square Pumpkin.
Yes.
Which is one of the new ones. And then we were talking about this before we started. Like every show that you watched had kind of a Halloween episode, a Christmas episode, and the very special episode where like something happens, like
Our favorite one is not our favorite one because that's weird, but our favorite one is the Different Strokes. Dudley gets
Dudley gets by the bike shop guy. And not that we think, we do not think molestation's funny, but the way those shows were like, this week a very special Different Strokes.
So they always ended with the people looking right at the camera, breaking character, and talking to you like, okay.
Yeah, and like if the show had a laugh track and ended with applause, like that one didn't. So yeah, I'm trying to think what other Halloween. So yeah, every episode of your favorite show, every show had like, the Happy Days gang went to a costume party and the Fonz was the Fonz but with a clown nose on or something.
Some dumb shit, yeah. Yeah, I remember the Garfield one. Um, like you said, I remember recently Spookly the Square Pumpkin. That actually was funny because there's a place not too far from here, Stanley Pond Adventure Farm. So if you're in Central Florida, you can look that up.
Oh, I like that place. Yeah, Mike,
Yeah,
we've been there.
Noah's a little bit too old for it now, I think. But they had like they would tell the Spookly story. They do what they do is they've got like a bunch of different stuff to do as families on the farm, and one part of it is you can take this little wagon ride down to where he's got a little building with a projector screen and everything, and the thing shows a story depending on the holiday. And like Halloween is spookly, Christmas is mistletoe the kitten, blah blah blah, right?
Mhm.
And then there's an area right next to that they've got like you can buy the little stuffed animal and the book and whatever to go with it if you want. Um, but like we wound up going for every holiday, and Noah has like every book and every stuffed animal still saved, just up in storage because he loved that place. And I give the guy credit because like he basically like he sold his mortgage or whatever he did after he retired and like just dumped all the money into that farm to build that thing for families to go to. So like I really like that guy a lot. He did a really good job up there. But that's where we found Spookly. And yeah, so I remember that one. We would watch that, and I think Noah's growing out of it. He hasn't asked about it, but he would watch that for about 4 years for a while.
Yeah.
Well, then, like I said, you had Garfield. There was one on here for the Flintstones, and I kind of vaguely remember, but that's also like kind of wrapping up into that. Every cartoon we grew up with kind of had like a special for a second, you know. Um, yeah, the Flintstones. I remember the Fat Albert Halloween special. For those of you who only know Bill Cosby as a rapist, uh, he had Fat Albert and the Cosby Gang. That was a cartoon back when we were
He
growing
was
up.
America's dad at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, he was America's dad before he became America's rapist.
Yeah.
So Fat Albert was, hey, hey, hey. And yeah, there you go. That's like one of the few impressions I
That's
could do.
pretty good.
Thank you. Uh, so that was when obesity was funny. But yeah, it was a feel-good cartoon back in the 70s that we grew up with, right? And they had their little Halloween thing, and that was fun. There was always Casper the Friendly Ghost. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question.
Okay.
Quick side note tangent. Fat Albert. Could you do Fat Albert today? Could you do that show?
Because you know they
Are
tried
any of
to
those
make
things
a live action back when like creating in the beginning of the cartoon to live action thing. They did it with that Keenan Thomas, or whatever.
Keenan Thomas.
Went on to Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
He played Fat Albert and it bombed. But yeah,
But like in 2021, the way the characters are like some of them I think are offensive. Like I think some of that stuff is now considered offensive, even though like Bill Cosby's like the creators are African American. Like I don't know that you can do that show now.
Well, it's funny. I think only because of the fact that you call him Fat Albert, because he was like a 300-pound 12-year-old.
Yeah,
running around like he was huge.
Yeah.
And then you had Mushmouth. They made fun of some kid with a lisp, right?
Dumb Donald, yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't making fun of them. They all had nicknames but it's actually, if you think about it, it's the perfect I guess not algorithm, but the perfect metaphor for how we grew up. Like sometimes in the 80s, like you weren't making fun of somebody, you were just calling it like it was. And that's
like he was part of the group, right? Like
they were all one.
They
group.
all hung out together, right?
Yeah.
They didn't make fun of Dumb Donald or Mushmouth or
no. They were all friends, and they all learned lessons and did stuff together. Mm-hmm. And it was a feel-good show.
Learning from each other while we do our thing.
Yeah. Wow. Pulled that one out. That was nice. There you go. So yeah, so some of these other ones in here I don't really remember. I'll post this link onto our website. Um, the trying to hurry up. I know later on in the late '90s when I got too old to watch this shit, you had a whole bunch of them that are now on Disney Plus. I think Halloween Town, and like it had like at least two sequels. There was also Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy, and I've never watched any of those, so I don't know.
I
But
think the best. I think the best. I guess they're regular episodes, but every year, The Simpsons, Treehouse of Terror,
yes,
I think are the very best Halloween special. I don't know if it's fair to call those specials, but they do a Halloween episode that is
every year
right where
starts.
the aliens come down or do something. There's always an appearance by those aliens.
There's
But
always
like
something.
really well done and outside of the normal sort of Simpsons
Yeah, but they
episodes.
do like everything. They touch on all kinds of horror from pop culture.
Yep.
They
Yep.
do random stories that have nothing to do with pop culture, but it's always a very Halloweeny episode, and like something weird is going to happen. It's definitely it's like their Halloween version of Simpsons What If. Like here's a this has nothing to do with the regular continuity of the Simpsons, and this is what we're
Yep.
going to do. And they do it. They started it with season 2, and those are literally like my favorite episodes. And I love the Simpsons, but I've fallen off watching them. But I always watch the Treehouse of Horror. Uh, to the point where like before streaming and everything became a thing quite a few years ago, I got a DVD and I found every episode I possibly could online. I burned them all to a DVD, and I just had a Treehouse of Horror DVD that I would watch every October.
Right.
I love those; they're amazing. Some of the shit in there is just amazing. Like,
Yeah.
Willie, the groundskeeper Willie, as Freddy Krueger.
Mhm.
You know, like just random shit like that.
Yeah.
You know, they would do so many things. And yeah, there's Bride Boogedy on there. Garfield. There was recently, way more recently, 2013. Pixar did Toy Story of Terror,
Oh yeah.
which was actually really good. Like I enjoyed that a lot, and I'm hoping, or well, I was hoping they would do many more Pixar shorts like that, and they kind of did, but they really didn't. I was hoping they would do that kind of like they do The Simpsons, you know, but they haven't. And I think really the last main Halloween special that you can kind of go with isn't just a special, but it's just a it's she's a fixture of Halloween. Yeah, she had her own special in 1986. She had a movie because
Mhm.
she grew to pop culture status like crazy. Growing up, it was probably one of the first reasons I realized puberty was a thing. Uh, you have Elvira.
Yep.
Elvira, the Mistress of the Dark. Um, I forget her real name. I just saw it recently. But even out of all the get up, and now she's much older. She's in her 60s or whatever. Um, and ironically, a lesbian or well, bisexual, but she's in love with a woman. She's married to a woman now. So there you go, trivia. Uh, Elvira's married to a woman. So if that doesn't make your 80s self hot, I don't know. Um, this woman would,
Right.
huh? No, so she
Right.
started out with, you're breaking up a little bit. Sorry.
No.
This woman started out with she would introduce horror movies, like B horror movies on TV, late night on TV. And
Mhm.
she's just this big breasted woman, very pale, big breasted, with this big beehive black hairdo, and like the kind of scariest makeup on, not really, but kind of like, done up in a horror-esque thing, and this slinky black dress, and she'd be lounging on a little lounge chair and talking to people all seductively, and that's how you first met her. And then she just became this like pop culture icon for horror, and wind up with a movie, like I said, and then this Halloween special. You can't have Halloween without Elvira. I mean, this chick was selling Bud Light or Coors Light, or like she was everywhere back when we were growing up.
And didn't she start on some sort of public access channel? Like, I don't know how it grew, because it was like
Yeah, I'll tell you how
Friday night or Saturday night.
That's how it grew.
Yeah. It was like a Friday night, Saturday night, one of those 2 night shows. It was on late, and it was on like, so for most of my life, well, until probably like the mid 80s when we got cable, like you had four, like if you lived in a big enough city, you had 5 channels, right? You had like,
Yep.
you had NBC, CBS, ABC. You had 1 or 2 UHF stations, in the 30s or
whatever
40s.
your local channels were as for news or whatever.
Yeah, but you had like the independent station, like the UHF, and then like maybe a PBS station.
Yep.
If you lived in a bigger city, you had 2 or 3 PBS, and then you had like the public access stuff.
Yeah.
But like she was on like whatever the UHF station was where I lived at like Saturday nights at like 11. So I almost never saw it until I got a little bit older. And then by the time cable happens, like she got a show, USA Network or one of those things. Something like that, like doing that same shtick.
Yeah, and she did that little sexy little horror vixen thing, but she basically was like the Crypt Keeper before the Crypt Keeper was a Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
Like she would introduce the show, and then she would kind of pop in here and there before.
Yeah, she just like before, right? Go to commercial with her, come back from commercial with her to set up the next, talk a little bit more about the movie or do some behind the scenes stuff, and then it played the movie. She was like the hostess.
Yeah, so Elvira has been Halloween for me for decades, and she'll never stop. I don't know. I got to think for her. Yeah, so I mean that's Halloween specials. There's so many. If you Wikipedia or go to just Google lists of Halloween specials for next year, you'll find all kinds of shit you want to watch. Really, the next one's more of a visual thing, but we can just really quickly run through it since we're gonna wrap up, and I'll share this to the website just as a joke. I'll type something up. Some of the weirdest costumes, or like my other idea was, why the hell did they make a sexy costume of that? And your initial answer was, well, why not? Because it should. and you're not wrong. Go ahead. So, like some of the stuff that we looked at here.
Here's like before I got married, I lived downtown Orlando with a couple buddies, and we'd go out. He still is in the liquor business, and so we knew, like, because it was his territory. The downtown Orlando bars on Orange Avenue were his territory, and so he sold the liquor to them. Right? He worked for a liquor distributor, and so they were his customers, and so he knew every bouncer and bartender in town. So we went out probably, I'm not kidding when I tell you, I drank 4 nights a week in my late 20s, early 30s. And so Halloween downtown became this giant like street parties. And every girl's in like sexy Rainbow Bright, sexy strawberry shortcake, dirty cheerleader, whatever, and you're just like, this is pretty good.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah. So on these things, we've had there's a couple here. I'll pop this open real quick. There were all kinds of, I mean, anything that they can put as little clothing on a woman or sometimes a guy, and just run with it. Like you said, there's a Rainbow Bright in there. There's a sexy Halloween costume for what looks like Patrick from SpongeBob, and it's just a woman with like a Patrick head on, and really weird.
Yeah.
she doesn't look bad, but it looked really weird.
The thing for guys was after 300 came out, like anybody that thought they looked decent would like try to be the Leonidas
Yeah,
300 guy.
if they had two abs, they were going.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, there are so many that are like, all right,
At my
cool, but
at my heaviest, I considered putting that thing on and just going out as 350.
that would have been
Or
perfect.
310. Yeah, 310.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Like there's one on this list that's literally all right, a woman in a yellow little tight thing, it just goes down to her legs, and she's just got smiley faces over her boobs. And I'm like, all right, so she's a sexy emoji, but I mean, she still looks good though. It's so fucking weird. Like these costumes are weird. But all right, but I'll post them. Sexy Trump. That's way weird.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it's I nope. Sorry. I don't have weird feelings about that one. No, you you lost me. Sexy Big Bird was kind of. We'll post them. You can tell us what you think.
Right.
All right, and so all right, because it's Halloween, haunted places, and have you ever been haunted or seen a ghost? And the haunted places thing, I didn't get a chance to do as much research or as much typing as I wanted to do. Thinking of like, places where like you've heard um stories about. So we'll just keep it short to everybody had that like local story about places that might either be haunted or be whatever, like somebody's house or something had something going on. Or like we had literally we used to call it the Barrens, like Stephen King's It, right? There was a little piece of land a couple of blocks away from my house. And now growing up and getting older, I realized it's only about maybe 1 or 2 acres of land that was just sitting there that was undeveloped because it had a giant pond in the middle of it. And by giant, I mean it might have been like twice the size of my pool. Like it was just not something that they really wanted to mess with, right? So it was just there. But all the kids would go hang out there no matter how many times their parents told us no and whatever. But there were always rumors that like, you know, kids died there and their ghosts were there, or there were like things living in the lake. That we called it a lake. It wasn't a lake. I mean, but there were always like these little rumors about that place, and we would always go hang out there because it was a place away. In New York, it was a little bit of nature that was away from like just city life. It was like this little area that you could hang out and like you were away from your house and you couldn't see a building where you was sitting,
Yeah.
And but there was like this old abandoned car that some drunk had like, jumped the little curb on the outside of the entrance of this thing and like it landed there, so that kind of thing. So it was just this abandoned little area that we hung out in, and it was creepy sometimes, but the other thing, I guess, before I get into this, like, do you have anything like that in your life, like either a place or an experience that
there's so when I lived in New Jersey, we didn't live too far from in the pine. There's like a Pine Barrens part of South Jersey, and that's like the reported home of the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so in that area, I've never seen anything, but that was cool being at least close to that area. I'm trying to think about. I've never been to Amity, New York. So not other than New Jersey, not really.
Right. All right. So like for me, I've always been like open to the idea of ghosts or whatever. Because like for me, I always like just a basic belief is like, we're energy. We got to go somewhere, right? And then maybe we don't leave, we stay for whatever reason. traumatic death, whatever reason you want to give it, right? They don't always leave. And for me, I'm okay believing that kind of thing. Um, I've had vague experiences here and there, like when my parents died. I remember not necessarily seeing a ghost, but I can remember right after my father died, I had vivid dreams for about 2 weeks where I would get in a car with my father and we would talk. And then he would let me out of the car and give me money for a bus to go back home. And I would be like, well, why don't you just take me back home? And he'd say, I can't, I have to keep going. And I said, well, why don't I just hang out with you? And he would tell me, you can't. And it was like for 2 weeks. And it was like this whole thing. Because my father and I didn't have the best relationship before he died. But it was like this whole thing where we would talk. And at the end of like that couple of weeks of dreams, he told me, all right, look, I'm not going to come back. He's like, I've got to do some stuff. But, I love you, whatever. And that was the end of the dreams. And you could chalk it up to like, my 15-year-old mind dealing with the loss or whatever. Or you could chalk it up to that veil where he was able to come back in my dreams and talk to me for a little while, right? Because it was weird because I had never experienced something like that before. And then there was one time right after my father died that when we moved in with my uncle that I woke up one night and my brother was sleeping in the bed next to me. I woke up to go to the bathroom or something, and he was sitting up in bed with the blankets all the way up against. And I said, "What's wrong with you?" And he said, "I saw something." And we went upstairs and we talked to my uncle, and he told my uncle, he's like, he said, "Did you come downstairs last night?" And he said, "No." He goes, "Well, somebody came and was sitting on John's bed." And my uncle said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I was sitting there and this shape sat down on John's bed, looked at me, kind of leaned over toward me, but I couldn't see who it was. So I got scared and I hid. And then they just kind of sat there and like leaned forward. And like the way he leaned forward, my uncle, my dad now, looked at him, he kind of like sat back for a second and he laughed and he goes, "I think your father came to see you last night." He goes, anytime your father had something weighing on his mind, he would sit like this. And he mimicked exactly the way my brother described this shape sitting on my bed, right? Wow. So he goes like, yeah, he said, what, hey, it can happen, And the only other one I ever had was Noah. And I've told you this story before, but when he was teeny tiny, we have pictures of family all over the house. And I would walk him around, and because we live away from family, I would be like, that's your Uncle Mike, and that's whoever, right? And he was just, he was small, so you just stare at it. And then we would get to the picture of Heather's parents, and I'd be like, there's Grandpa and there's Grandma, and he would look right at Heather's mother, and his face would light up, and he would like reach out toward it. And I was like, that's really weird, So every time he did it, I started joking around. I'm like, I think he recognizes your mother. Her mother died 20 years ago, or over 20 years ago, in a car accident. Right. So obviously, not like even like our older kids don't remember this woman, right? But Noah would reach out for this picture of this woman every time. And when he got to about 2-ish, when he started talking, there were a few times, it happened twice. One time, Heather was in the kitchen and he was in the living room playing, and she distinctly heard him say, "No, yeah, no, yeah, no, no, grandmother," like scolding, like grandmother, right? And then another time, she heard him talking, and she came in. It was like a few days later or whatever. She came in and she said, "Who are you talking to?" And he was little, like he was 2. So he said, "Mom." And she's like, "No, no, me, I'm Mom. Who are you talking to?" And he said, "Mom." And she's like, "Okay, yeah, but who are you just talking to?" And he said, "Not you, Mom." Oh, no, he was going, "Mom, Mom." And Heather goes, "What?" And she goes, not you, other mom. And she laughed. She's like, what's your dad doing? And she's like, what are you talking about, other mom? And he goes, not you, mom, other mom, your mom. Specifically said your mom, right? And she went, okay, carry on. just go ahead. And then every once in a while, so now every once in a while, something in this house will happen like random. Like just the other night, I was sitting here doing some shit, and I've got like all my geek shit up here, and my Infinity Gauntlet just like powered up by itself. Now I know it's the batteries going out, right? But I was sitting here doing whatever, and it powered up, and I just looked up, and I'm like, "Hey, Judy, how you doing? What's up?" To me, it's always her messing with stuff.
Right.
I'm good with that. Like I'm gonna stick with that one. So yeah, I mean, I believe they're out there, but so there you go. Anybody else got really cool stories? Comment, write us, let us know what your cool ghost stories are. All right. I guess what is scarier at night during the day? I think we already kind of went over that with the basement. We can skip that one. Real quick, we'll just go over some cool horror movies, and then we'll be done. I know we've done this on a couple episodes, but just to kind of remind people of some cool shit to watch between now and Sunday, we'll revisit some of our favorite horror movies. For classics, what do you got?
I mean, I think you got to. It starts and it doesn't end, but it starts with Halloween, the original John Carpenter Halloween, and then 2 is decent. From then, and then it gets ridiculous until it reboots, resets, whatever it is with last year's Halloween, the new one, and then. But God, I mean, any of these movies, right? Any in the horror genre of Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all of those are good. Trying to think of anything else out of the. Obviously, any classic Dracula, Frankenstein,
Yes.
the original werewolf.
Go back and watch old shit. You might not be scared by today's standards, but you'll see where the shit came from. The Exorcist. Mm-hmm. The Exorcist is one of those movies that still to today fucks me up.
That's terrible. That movie's terrifying.
Yeah, something about demon possession and that's why movies like and we'll get into them later on, but some of these other movies later on still get to me because anything to do with like demons or possession or something fucks me up.
The thing where her head spins around and you just hear that the bones crack.
Yes, yeah, and just the little things like when she says shit like your mother's in here with us. Would you like to leave a message? Like what the fuck is that?
Or just what it does to her face, right? And the scabs, and then he throws the holy water and it's burning.
Burns her. Yeah. She levitates above the bed and just all the shit in there. Yeah. And then when they did the director's cut a few years, not a few, but quite a few years later, they did a director's cut where they put back in some shit that they did and they left out of the movie. And I was like an adult watching this. And that was when you saw the spider walk down the stairs. It completely fucked me up. Yeah. I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm a grown man. I'm about to piss my pants. It was so fucked up looking. So that's one that stays with me. But yeah, movies like that, all the classics. Halloween is right on my list. I love that one. But old school ones like The Changeling and shit like that are like old and creepy. Like they fuck you up.
Original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is pretty scary. Like the original.
Yeah, it started to get a little campy again. Yeah, it's like everything else. There's like the Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas, and even Hellraiser all started to get a little campy. But like their original ones were always fucking scary.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how they couldn't keep that formula going.
Any of the Rob Zombie, when Rob Zombie started directing horror movies like House of a Thousand Corpses, can't think of the other one.
Devil's Rejects.
Yeah, there. Yeah, thank you.
And then Three from Hell. That was the I forget what they call it, but it's a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those are really good. His Halloween remake, while I didn't need Michael Myers' backstory, it was still good.
Yeah.
It was really good. Now, that being said, getting into this next, well, I guess that's a perfect segue into this, the newer movies that are later than like the last 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get your old school to kind of pivot from one to the other. You have Halloween that we both named. The original was great. The second one was good, but their original thought on Halloween, I've said this time and again, was Halloween 1 and 2 were the Michael Myers story. And then I think Halloween, from what I read, was supposed to be like an anthology series, kind of like Black Mirror, whatever. They were going to be all stories, but based on Halloween, but different things.
Right.
Why you got Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, with the masks and everything, right? Which is, again, everybody like panned it because it wasn't Michael Myers. But if you go back and watch it, it's a creepy fucking story, right? These Halloween masks are killing kids. Everybody complained, so they came back and they brought the Return of Michael Myers, number 4, and he just became another Jason, Freddy, whatever, right? So then Rob Zombie comes in and remakes Halloween, and it was really cool. And I was like, all right, that's nice. And that kind of started the whole revamp of like him, Jason in a remake of Friday the 13th, and then the Nightmare on Elm Street with Jackie whatever his name is from
Jackie Earl Haley.
Yeah, Jackie Earl Haley. Yeah, that guy. He played him instead of Robert Englund, and it wasn't a horrible movie, but it wasn't great because everybody loved Freddy. So whatever. But that started kind of a renaissance of this remake shit. So then Carpenter came back just recently and redid Halloween in 2018. And what he did was he said, all right, from the end of 1, even forget 2, from the very end of 1, we stop. And now we're picking it up. And we're going to tell you what's been going on real quick. And then we're going to continue the story. And you've had Halloween in 2018 and then Halloween Kills this year. And I've watched both. You haven't watched Halloween Kills yet, right? Mm-hmm. But oh my God. I'm like, we're back, and I cannot wait for the last one next year. This series is great. So like, again, I love horror. So in the last 10 years, there's been quite a few that I've really enjoyed. Like that one, the new Halloween stuff I love. Again, while I've said before that I'm not always about all the remakes, the Evil Dead remake in 2013 was really fucking good.
Is that right?
Because they took out all the humor. like all the humor is gone. It's a straight fucking horror movie, and it's scary as fuck.
Yeah.
When it first came out, and we could watch it on a streaming service, Jessie asked me if I would watch it with her because she likes the idea of horror movies, but she can't watch them alone. So I remember this because it was before we moved down here, and we were sitting in the house in Virginia. And I was like, yeah, I'll watch it with you. So I turned it on. And the thing didn't even get through the whole scene with like the girl running into the woods and everything in the very beginning. And I looked over, and the area of the couch that she had been sitting on was empty. She was gone. She was fucking gone. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm watching this alone. Yeah, it was really, really, really good. Some of the like I said before with the possession movies that I like The Conjuring and all those kind of things where you get into the Warrens. There's like 2 or 3 different versions of the same shit that came out all at the same time. But there was The Conjuring and all that shit that came out. That was really cool. But I liked Sinister. I think it had Ethan Hawke. It's 2012, Sinister. And it has something to do with like a demon in the house or whatever. It was really creepy. It was really good. And then, of course, It in 2017, the It remakes. Those both were great. I love those. And then kind of getting into just away from straight up horror. It was it for me. It turned horror on its head. Was in 2011, Cabin in the Woods. Did you ever watch that one? Chris Hemsworth was in this one, but it actually came out.
I was just looking because the Eli, yeah,
yeah, it came out after he played Thor. And can you still hear me? Are you frozen? No, there you go. Sorry,
yeah,
my internet's all fucked up. Hang on. Give me a second. Give me a second. Switching. Is that any better? Is that any better? Can you move? God damn it. Okay, there you go. And now I can't hear you.
No, how about
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, my internet shit the bed for a second there. You see, my internet's got you back. They're like, go to sleep. All right, yeah, Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin, like the Eli Roth movies, Hostel. I think he made
Yes.
Cabin. Did he make Cabin? He made Cabin in the Woods.
I think, yeah.
That it's a new. I don't know. If it's a genre of like the super creepy, ultra gory. Human Centipede. Like he didn't make this movie, but like those kind of movies where they take that shock factor up a couple of notches.
Yeah.
Is sort of the new place we are.
Yeah, and I want to say, I want to say, but I don't want to say because there was a part of me that was like, I'm glad I watched it, but I can never sit down and watch it again.
Yeah,
I watched Human Centipede and the sequel. I never watched the third one. I'm sure at some point I have to, but wow, but yeah, like wow, it's like you're not the same after you watch those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you actually watch Cabin in the Woods?
No, I'm not seen Cabin in the Woods.
Fuck, because I don't want to ruin it, but it's from 2011. All right, well, you know what? You'll still enjoy it. I'm going to ruin it. Sorry. So it starts off with your stereotypical Evil Dead, group of teens going to a cabin, seeing the local yokel at the gas station, all that shit, right? And then when they get to the cabin, they're doing whatever they're doing in there, and you start to realize real quick, like they cut the scenes of a bunker, and there's like a whole government organization that's watching them in this cabin, and they it's funny because they're taking bets on what's going to happen within the cabin. So it's still a horror movie, but they're taking these bets on this shit, and like there's these relics within the cabin that like something they're going to touch is going to unlock something. So like these guys, like, what are they going to unlock? Are they going to unlock the zombie rednecks? Are they going to unlock this thing? Whatever. And it turns out that the whole thing was all these kids are sacrifices to this demon god that lives under the earth, and the government is sacrificing these kids, and they're all the stereotypical, the jock,
right,
the dirty girl, the pothead, the little slut, right? It's the stereotypical 80s horror kids.
mm-hmm.
They find people that fit those stereotypes, and that are friends, and they bring them there for the exact same stories that we've been watching. But the reason they're doing it is because they're appeasing this god to keep it down there.
That's funny.
And you've got to watch this movie. Like, even knowing that, and I'm sorry that I ruined that part for you, but even knowing that, you have to watch this movie because it's fucking epic. Like, when you watch it, you're like, oh my God. And all the little Easter eggs and nods they do to horror movies that we grew up, you're like,
right.
wow, it's amazing. So yeah, that one's, while it's not a standard horror, when you first go into it, you think it's a standard horror. So that's why I put it on this list, because like you think it's standard horror, and then like they smack you in the face with that. And you're like, wow, this is a fucking amazing movie.
Wow.
You have any more for that list for the last 10 years?
Mm.
All right. Horror comedy. What do you got?
Let's see, Beetlejuice,
Yo.
right? You got to go there. You've got some good ones on this list. Zombieland is a great one.
Yep.
Um,
Even the sequel is good.
yeah. Ghostbusters, obviously.
Yeah,
More
which leads
comedy.
us right into the end of the year because I can't wait for that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think any of the what's his name, Simon Pegg movies.
Yeah,
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun
Shaun
of
of
the
the Dead's
Dead.
the one about the cop where he's a cop, right?
No, Shaun of the Dead. No, that's Hot Fuzz.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That's like there's they call that a trilogy or something too. But Shaun of the Dead was the first one where it's a zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one like he literally wakes up in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, but he's so like hungover that he walks all the way across the street to the store and comes back, and there's people shuffling around, and like he just ignores them because he's so hungover. It's such an amazing fucking movie. But yeah, that's Shaun of the Dead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I'm sure there's something that's just not coming to mind right this minute.
There's so many that have like so many funny moments. Like you can go back as far as like the Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, right?
Yeah,
Like
Meet the
those are
Wolfman,
classics that
Meet
I
Dracula.
haven't seen in decades, and I keep meaning to go back and watch, but I haven't yet. I think with Christopher here, I'll probably want to watch him because I just got him to sit down and watch most of History of the World,
Oh yeah.
and he was laughing his ass off. Like, he was like, "Wow, this is amazing." I'm like, "Oh, you just wait." Because you got Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. Like Mel Brooks is like right in his wheelhouse. So it was amazing. So yeah, so all those Abbott and Costello ones, like I loved those when I was a kid. And again, going back to what we said about 80s Saturday during the day, you can catch those right after the cartoon.
All right.
Yeah, the last two that I've got are one of my favorite movies growing up was 1987, The Monster Squad. Was you ever see this one? There's a group of kids, kind of like think Stand By Me, Stranger Things, right? A group of kids that hang out and do whatever, right? Read comics, and all the classic monsters are real, and they come up. So you got Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, the Gill monster from
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, thank you. Right, you got all of those, right? The Mummy, they're all there, and these kids are the only ones that realize they're real. And like, there's this whole. It doesn't quite hold up anymore. I'd love to see them remake it with some of these younger actors now, but especially with the effects. But they look very much like the old school monsters that we grew up with. And I remember this one scene in there that's classic that always makes me laugh. Was like there's like the fat kid, kind of like Chunk from Goonies, and the Wolfman is chasing him down the street, and like he's screaming, and the other kid who's like the little leader is like he just yells out, "Kick him in the nards," and the kid goes, "The Wolfman don't got nards." He's like, "Just do it," and he kicks his fucking Wolfman, and the Wolfman's like, "Ruh! Like he goes down to his knees, and the two of them go, "Wolfman's got nards," and they run away. And it's one of the funniest fucking things I can remember from my childhood. So yeah, just for that alone, it's fun to watch. It's just one of those campy, dumb '80s shits that's really funny. And the last one I got on here, and we can wrap this up. 2010, and I somehow I kept meaning to watch this, and I didn't watch it until probably about like 2 years ago. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Have you seen this?
No.
Oh my God. All right. This one I cannot ruin for you. So Tucker and Dale versus Evil, it got this huge following and this tremendous review about it's like one of the best horror comedies come out in a long time. And basically, Tucker and Dale are, how do I say this without ruining anything? They're two like rednecks. Think like Texas Chainsaw Massacre type rednecks, right? They're like overalls and whatever. And they pull up to a gas station at the same time that your typical 80s group of teenagers pulls up to the gas station to go off to their little cabin in the woods, right? They pull up at the same time. And the kids see these two yokels filling up their truck or whatever. And the one guy is like just kind of like looking over at them. And he's not like, he's just filling up the gas tank, but they're looking at him like he's all creepy. And the whole movie is a bunch of a comedy of errors where these kids think that these two guys are killers and they're just two innocent rednecks that are caught up in all this bullshit.
Right.
And it's one of the funniest fucking things. Like I said, everyone kept telling me about it. I kept saying I was going to watch it and I didn't. And finally, like 8, 9, 10 years after it came out, I sat down and watched it. You have to watch this.
Okay.
It's one of the best fucking movies ever. It's so fucking funny. And it hits on every trope in horror movies, and you're just gonna be laughing at the whole way through. It's great. All right, so I'm pretty sure we have no caveats because we've been going on for too fucking long.
Right.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this extra long episode because even when Paul and I have nothing to talk about, we can go on for 2 hours.
Right.
So that was when you get old and you just kind of ramble on. Let us know what you think about Halloween in the 80s and all these movies and shows and shit that we talked about. Comment down below in the YouTube, like, subscribe, ring a bell. Hit us up at whatifgeeks.com, whatifgeeks@gmail.com, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Tell us some of the movies and shows that you really love during Halloween, and get ready for the rest of the holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything, because we're gonna have to do something like this at least for Christmas. Not too much for Thanksgiving other than a Macy's Day parade, and getting fat and watching football. So yeah, let us know what you think, and we will see you next week. Good night, Tony.
Good night, Elvira.
Not forever.
That's right.